Hello, class. My name is Trayvon McNabb, and I will be doing my presentation on cerebral palsy. So, what is cerebral palsy exactly? Cerebral palsy is a disorder and a disability that kind of affects a lot of students where they can't walk and do normal physical activities. They have like jerk movements, and also it's just a struggle to walking from place to place. And cerebral palsy is a disability that a lot of people don't have information about. So I'm hoping that I can give you guys more information on it, just in case maybe you might have a family member or a friend, or like I said, for teachers, you end up encountering a student that might have this disability and you want to help them out and stuff. So when it comes to cerebral palsy, these are some of the statistics that I feel like we got to know about. So one in every 345 child is affected by it. Now I know that it doesn't seem like a big stat, but that's something we gotta watch for. But just says just like with anything else, one is one too many. And also, we want to see this just because we want to know the proper protocol to help these students with the disability out. We want to know like how should I accommodate them, what classroom should I put them in? Make sure they're not going upstairs, or do they need an elevator, things of that nature. Another stat that we got to watch out for is that 764,000 Americans are living with cerebral palsy. That's very interesting because, once again, this is a stat that I feel like a lot of people wouldn't guess because, it's very rare that you encounter a child with cerebral palsy. But once again, it's information that we have to know about because a lot of students that we're going to encounter, a lot of people are going to have this. So once again, you got to know the proper protocol to help them out. You got to know, what engages them, what makes them nervous and things like that. And also you want to avoid things like, doing things that might make them have a seizure and things of that nature. And also, another stat that I feel like people got to know about is that 41% can walk independently. So what this means is that means 49% need help, and we got to have accommodations to help them. And I know this for sure because when I first became an instructional aide at Buena Park 4 years ago, the student I was a one-on-one aide for, his name was Brian, and Brian had cerebral palsy. So Brian, he was a very smart kid, but he had a hard time being able to walk by himself. And a lot of times we would get scared that if we didn't help accommodate him and stuff like that, he would probably fall and have a seizure. So a lot of times, he would have to walk side by side with me, or we would have to push him in a wheelchair. But another stat that I feel like people need to know about is that one in every four child of 1,000 is born with cerebral palsy. So once again, it's a stat that I know people are going to say like, well, that's not a lot, that's not a big number, but once again, it just means that once again, if we're going through birth and stuff like that, got to make sure that you have a natural birth. You got to also make accommodations if maybe you're having a premature birth, and you got to make sure you're just eating and exercising the right way when you might be pregnant because you might end up having a child that has cerebral palsy and stuff like that. Another stat that was very interesting is that more boys are affected with cerebral palsy than girls. And I can attest to that because most of the people that I have encountered that have cerebral palsy were mostly males. I still haven't myself seen a lot of girls that have cerebral palsy. Most of the people that I've encountered with it were males. So, I do know that that's a stat that, we kind of have to watch out for too because there are more, males that's affected with this than females. And another stat that was very interesting too, that it said that most kids affected with cerebral palsy is African Americans than many other races, and that's very interesting too, simply because not just because of the demographics, but I feel like just a lot of kids that we might not even think have cerebral palsy. So we have to watch for that number, especially, being mentors, being educators and things like that, because we got to know the proper protocols, what to do, what not to do, and just things to help them out and just help them engage and do good in a learning environment and just life. So what is cerebral palsy? Well, it ties back to what I was saying in the first slide. So basically, this is kind of the information on it, and it kind of shows you what they might have and what they might not have. So basically, kind of like I was saying earlier, cerebral palsy is a disorder that affects everyday lives for certain kids, and also it affects oxygen of the brain, and also it gives them muscle stiffness, and it makes it hard for them to do physical activities like running, being able to jump, because a lot of them might have jerk movements. A lot of them might not be balanced and coordinated, because of cerebral palsy. And a lot of students that have cerebral palsy, they also kind of struggle processing information, at the same speed as maybe a high level functional student. So there, there's many things, and also too with cerebral palsy, it kind of affects their motor skills, meaning that it's hard for them to just do normal things like maybe be able to write like the speed of a normal student and things of that nature. And these are some key characteristics that I wanted us to kind of fill out. So kind of like the stats I was giving you guys earlier, these are things that I feel like being a an educator, we have to know this stuff because many of the students that we're going to encounter might have cerebral palsy. So for example, when I was working with B kind of was in a mode of a mixed cerebral palsy and spastic cerebral palsy because he did have a lot of jerk movements. He wasn't really balanced, and he had a hard time with coordination. So a lot of times when you do encounter a student with cerebral palsy, you got to watch for these little things because you might want to see like, okay, they struggle like walking from place to place, or okay, they might struggle riding at a certain speed, or okay, it might take them a little longer to process this information. So this is the accommodations that I got to make to help the student, just help this kid prosper in life. So this research-based strategy was very important because once again, working with B, he helped me to see, what kind of helps a lot of students with cerebral palsy prosper. So visual schedules and graphic organizers are really good because with Brian, if you just gave him lectures and stuff like that, he probably couldn't process the information as fast as the average student. But if you actually gave him visual examples and you gave him pictures and slides, he could process the information really fast. And if you gave him audio instructions and visual cues, once again, tying back to what I just said earlier, it helped him learn faster because more physical information and more visuals, that was better for him. And the digital text was great for him simply because even though he might struggle to write at a certain speed, if it was on a Chromebook, a tablet, or anything, he could actually type faster and could finish his assignments just as fast as the average student, if you allow him to do it on technology and stuff like that. And just like with everything else, like the multiple means of engagement is important simply because it just ties back into everything I said. Because we had goals for him to prosper. It was a certain speed. We wanted him to do the assignments. Sometimes okay, it was certain things you knew was going to help him engage more, and you just found different ways to help him prosper. And that's what I feel like you can do with a lot of students that have cerebral palsy. And this is some information, for strategies and information that can help, and just technology that will help students with cerebral palsy. And these are a couple of sources that I feel like are good for teachers simply because it gives information on statistics, what works, what doesn't work, what you might accommodate, and also what you might experience when dealing with a student that might have cerebral palsy, and some of the accommodations that will really help them prosper. And these are some of the websites I feel will help us as a parent, because if you might be giving birth, or you might see a kid that has symptoms of cerebral palsy, these are some websites that will really help, just because it gives information on what works, what might not work, how to get them to engage more, and also like little things you can do early on that will help them do well in just a bigger environment, like going to school and stuff like that. Now, building truly inclusive classrooms. So this was very important simply because working with B, I did notice that when you focused on his abilities and his limitations, he really prospered. Because yeah, he has cerebral palsy, but when you actually just allowed him just to learn at his own speed and stuff like that, he did really well. So he did good with things like technology and things like video game design and stuff like that. So when you learned that, I said, okay, we got to do things where give more visual cues, more physical information, because that's what helped them prosper, and that's what will help a lot of the kids prosper with cerebral palsy. If you find little ways and techniques that will help them prosper, collaborate with support teams. What really helped again was the administrators, his mother, and all of us was on one accord, because we all said, okay, this is what helps him to prosper. he might have seizures if he's at school too long. So this and that is going to really help him. Promote peer understanding, meaning that make him feel like he's just like everybody else. Yeah, he might have a disability, but when the kids made him feel welcome and they didn't treat him no different, he started to engage more and he enjoyed school. And because of that, Brian shocked everybody. And even though he had cerebral palsy and he had a lot of class to make up, he ended up making everybody proud and ended up graduating with his degree. And I feel like a lot of kids with cerebral palsy can do the same thing if we just make the accommodations for them. So thank you for allowing me to speak to you guys today, and I hope that the information I gave you guys really just touched based on, things that will help kids with cerebral palsy, and also what to do if maybe you might encounter a student or a child that might have cerebral palsy. Thank you.